And I'm telling you, when I say this light, it was, I mean, it was looked like the size of the Empire State Building was in this parking spot. That's how bright this thing was and how big it looked to me at the time. Little old me, here I am, just a random person, and God literally just spoke to me. And it was a verse that I can never forget.
You knew that God was knocking at your door, but you just weren't willing to open that. Why didn't you open the door sooner? I think that's like, what happened? Why did it take you so long?
I remember one time, she walked up to me and, just said, if you don't stop what you're doing, you know where you're going.
People of faith will share very subtle introductions, but clearly that didn't work for you. What you needed was something more in your face.
It stopped me in my tracks, and it opened the door for me to ask more questions. And when I finally decided to have a relationship with God, that a lot of that anger, a lot of those frustrations, those thoughts, they went away. It actually allowed me to even seek a relationship with my earthly father.
You could have lived the rest of your life with resentment because of your parents' divorce, lack of relationship, and instead you knew that the Lord was commanding you to forgive him and have an opportunity to restore that relationship. I think that's so beautiful.
If you look at statistics and you really reference back, I mean, we may be going into the weeds here, but I mean, why not?
Let's go. Ryan McGraw, you're here with us, the Women of Faith Show. Thank you for joining us. We're so excited to have this conversation about your faith story. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Our sponsor for this episode is NetWell. Navigating rising healthcare expenses for you and your families can be complex. And with NetWell, they help you make informed decisions that best suit your healthcare needs. NetWell is an innovative healthcare sharing organization designed to transform your healthcare experience and save you money. NetWell empowers its members with the flexibility to find the right membership option that meets their needs and their budget. They offer a unique approach to managing medical expenses that combines principles of faith with a community-oriented model. And unlike traditional healthcare models, NetWell is rooted in the values and beliefs of a faith-based community, emphasizing mutual support, generosity, and shared responsibility. What better way to save you and your family money throughout the year than with your healthcare needs? Check out their website, netwellwof.com, or call them and talk with a live representative at 866-NETWELL to learn more. I'm so excited to talk about your faith story because I know that you came to the Lord later in life. You did not grow up as a Christian, and you have told me before that you knew that God was knocking at your door, but you just weren't willing to open that. So tell us about how you came to know the Lord, and also, why didn't you open the door sooner? I think that's like, what happened? Why did it take you so long?
Yeah, it's always a great question, and sometimes hindsight is 2020, and you look back and you say, "Man, what if I'd have done something differently?" But at the same time, as you get to know the Lord, you realize and understand that He already paved that path.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's the great thing that God gives us is free will and the right to choose and the ability to choose. And it's so much more rewarding to know that I was able to choose Him out of my own personal free will, and to choose to follow Him and to worship Him, rather than obviously be forced to do that. So that's something that has always been intriguing about how wonderful our God is because of that ability to free will and just seek Him and have Him give us that guidance and strength to do that. But for me, it was just one of those things. I just never grew up in the church. And it's just my family, not to say that they were necessarily doing anything wrong, but I just we had different priorities. And as I got a little bit older and started to go about my career and get through college and start to look at wanting to have a family, I just felt that God was knocking at my door. And so often I just kind of heard the knocks and would kind of look to the peephole and say, who's there? But I just never opened the door. And then finally one day I did, and it's been a wonderful journey. But it hasn't been an easy journey. And I think that's part of the thing that we as Christians sometimes forget, that it's not a easy, hill all the time, or an easy or a flat path. It
Yeah.
has peaks and valleys. So
Okay, so tell me, can you give me any specific examples of where you felt like the Lord was calling you to him, but you just weren't willing to open the door? Can you think of any specific examples of that? Because I think those viewers listening right now, they might be thinking, well, I don't have a strong relationship with the Lord. I don't really know what that looks like. Could you give specific examples of that?
yeah, I think that I don't believe in coincidences, and I believe that there is no coincidence in life. It's always God's timing. Um, and I look at it from a standpoint of who just God has introduced in my life. And I look back when I was in my mid 20s. I was working in the fitness industry, working long hours, a lot of hours. But I remember this one lady in particular. Her name was Carol. I still talk to her to this day, and hired her as a personal trainer. She had a tremendous testimony just from a fitness background. And I don't want to delve too deep into to her personal side of things, but she was somebody that lost over 200 pounds and just wanted to help people and use that as a way to minister to people as well, and be a testimony on the fitness side. Well, during my time with her, I learned that she was a very strong woman of God, very strong in her faith. And I was just busy living, as a mid 20 guy and enjoying life, I guess, for the most part, as we think that we are.
Yeah.
And I remember one time, she walked up to me and just said, "If you don't, stop what you're doing, you know where you're going."
Wow.
And I didn't really think too much of it for the most part, but it was like it kind of was, in essence, it stopped me in my tracks, and it opened the door for me to ask more questions. And so maybe that's a little strong for some people to see that as, I've never had anyone be that blunt with me. But I look back, and it wasn't just that initial, that's how she started the conversation. She used to pepper me with just little conversations and just ask me about my walk, or hey, do you believe in God? I mean, just
Yeah.
simple things. And it was something that was just very conversational, and it was very simple, that wasn't overwhelming or overbearing. But I just wasn't at a point where I felt like, being in my 20s, I really needed God. And looking back, I mean, life could have been differently or more rewarding to it during those times. But it's realizing and listening and understanding that God has people come along in your life when you least expect it. And unfortunately, we just got to be ready to listen. And I think sometimes that's the biggest obstacle and hurdle, is that we're not listening when God's knocking.
Yeah, and sometimes those nice little sentiments, the nice things that we will say, people of faith will share very subtle introductions, but clearly that didn't work for you. What you
Mhm.
needed was something more in your face, and
Mhm.
it worked, right? And so I
Mhm.
think I always just remind myself, like, Holy Spirit, you help me know what to say in the situation. And for some people, it needs to be those soft, subtle
Mhm.
invitations. And for some people, sometimes you need the, hey, you need to get a grip and figure out what is going to make a difference in your life. So you must have been in that space and she knew it.
Yeah, absolutely. She knew it. And, again, I think that she was working for me at the time for 3, 4, 5 months. And I remember sitting in my office, and she would just come in and just sit down and talk to me, calm, polite. And then other times she would come in, and she was ready to let me have it. And, I love that about her. And, like I said, we probably haven't seen each other. We still keep in contact, but we haven't probably seen each other in 10 plus years. But we'll randomly text, we'll randomly talk on the phone occasionally. Uh, you know, she'll send me some videos on Instagram of encouragement. And she'll always comment on my stories and things like that. So it's just somebody that has been a very impactful in my life, and somebody that I'll never forget, and that everyone in their life needs a Carol, and I'm glad I have Carol in my life.
I love that. And I think you're so right. Everybody needs that person, and we can be that person for others.
Hmm.
It's something that we've been called to do. Each and every one of us has the opportunity to bring others to Christ. And so I'm so thankful that Carol did that for you. Um, so, how did life change? Once you
Hmm.
started to know Jesus, how did life change for you?
Well, like I said, life, for me, it allowed me to understand what priorities were. It allowed me to understand, really what I wanted, um, my impact personally to be. And some people will say maybe that's a selfish way to look at it, but I wanted to, when you asked me earlier, growing up, I mean, I grew up in a divorced household. So like my image at the time probably of God was a broken home. And because generally when you think of God, you think of your father, your worldly father,
Wow.
as the initial image that you have of God. And so when I went 16, 17 years, when my parents got divorced, and I didn't see my father for 16 years. I was 12 years old, 13 years old. Didn't see my father again until I was roughly 29 years old, and had a lot of anger, had a lot of frustration. Um, and when I finally decided to, have a relationship with God, that a lot of that anger, a lot of those frustrations, those thoughts, they went away, and it gave me peace. It gave me comfort, and it actually allowed me to even seek a relationship with my earthly father, and was able to reconnect with him. So it really impacted my perception of who God really was. And it impacted relationships. It impacted what I wanted to do with my life and my career, and how I wanted to raise my family. So there was the list can go on, and we could probably talk for days about it. But it really had a massive, drastic impact for me.
Wow. That offer of forgiveness, you could have lived the rest of your life with resentment, bitterness because of your parents' divorce, lack of relationship, and instead you knew that the Lord was commanding you to
Hmm.
forgive him and have an opportunity to restore that relationship. I think that's so beautiful. And the other thing that you mentioned very briefly was how you look at your earthly father is typically how you look at your heavenly father. Let's dig
Hmm.
in there a little bit. What does that mean? How is that true?
Well, I mean, again, we tend to forget that that at least the hierarchy for relationships should always fall with God, your spouse, your family, your kids, and everything else. Um, but growing up, I just that wasn't how I was raised and how I looked at it. And so my initial thought of, if my own worldly father was going to abandon me, what would make me think that my heavenly father will be there for me? And so, again, that was my initial viewpoint, because for the most part, um, when you look at statistics and how people generally come to Christ, is generally through, the father leading the household.
Yeah.
And when I don't have that father present in the household and helping me, keep me along that path and that journey, that's just how I viewed God. And it took me a long time to really understand that that wasn't my heavenly father. That was my earthly father.
Yeah.
um, but sometimes it's hard to separate that, especially when you don't grow up in the church.
Yeah. I recently heard a statistic that if a mother follows Jesus, there's
Hmm.
a decent chance that their children will. But if a father is, as the leader of the household, is following Jesus, it's like a 90 some percent chance. I don't have the actual statistic, but it's like 90 some percent chance that the
Hmm.
children will as well. And so just you saying that is so powerful, and understanding the power of how you view your earthly father is so important to your eternal life and your relationship with your heavenly father.
Hmm. Absolutely. And I literally read the same statistic, and it was mind blowing. The difference in percentages there, and that's not to take away from women at all, because it is something that I think that from me as a father of three boys, and me as a dad, and a family, that I see that in my own household,
Yeah.
and I see it with other people that I have relationships with, that it's the, the father or the man of the household can really help drive his family to Christ.
Yeah.
And if that father is missing, which if you look at statistics, and you really reference back, I mean, we may be going into the weeds here, but I mean, why not?
Let's
um,
go.
but if you look at how divorce rates over the years have really skyrocketed,
Yeah.
there's no wonder that um, the church, in essence, is shrinking, because divorce are going higher and higher, and so there is no presence of God in the family. Um, and I speak that from experience. I myself am divorced, and I am remarried, but I can understand why we continue to see the statistics go higher and higher. Right? My old pastor told me a statistic recently as well, that 90% of 90-year-olds grew up in the church. 70% of 70-year-olds grew up in the church.
Wow.
50% of 50-year-olds grew up in the church. And so you see this number continue to deteriorate, but we also see it on the opposite side of it. Divorce has gone higher and higher. So there's got to be a correlation there.
I want to take a moment during this episode to invite you to join me in our Women of Faith group coaching community. If you're looking to make a more significant impact for the kingdom, or you just know God is calling you to more than what you're currently experiencing in life, then you found the right place for you. And I'm hoping you're ready to rise up and live the promised life God has designed specifically for you. I absolutely love coaching our members to experience transformations as we navigate how God is calling them higher in their purpose, their identity, and significance in Christ. If you're passionate about living a victorious life with Jesus, join us as we encourage and equip women worldwide to move forward. Our aim is to encourage and empower women with the necessary tools to boldly step into God's destiny for them. My hope and prayer is that you'll join us and be a part of this movement of transformations and influencing others toward Jesus. To learn more, just simply go to womenoffaith.com and click on group coaching. We'll see you at our next coaching session. So you're very dedicated to this. I think some people don't like this term, but broken families, you're very
Mhm.
dedicated to helping other people not have to experience that for themselves. Where have you found opportunities to speak life into others as you just have navigated a being a child that has experienced broken families, and then as an adult you've divorced and remarried, but you have that broken family as well for your kids? How are you able to help others in those areas?
Yeah, one of my biggest passions, and is being a youth football coach. And I get emotional even talking about it, because we just played in a championship game this past weekend, and you know um, we ended up losing that game 7-6. We were winning the whole game, and it was one of those things where you just we the last 2 minutes we just got outplayed and we ended up losing. But it was a great opportunity, a great teaching moment for the kids. But to answer your question, that's where I love helping kids and helping impact kids, because as a coach, I see it all. I've got kids on my team that have parents, not only divorced or going through a divorce. I have kids on the team that maybe are adopted. I have kids on the team that are, parents may be potentially incarcerated. So there's a wide gamut and then you also have kids that have come from the perfect home, where their parents are still there, or at least it seems that it's perfect. There's parents are still married, and nothing seems like there's any issues there. So um, I have the ability to have an impact. And one of the things I said on that last speech that I gave him as we walked off the field for the final time, unfortunately, it wasn't our day, was, one thing that I will always promise to be here for you guys is that no matter where you're at, no matter what you're doing, no matter how old you are, I'm one phone call away.
Yeah,
And so, that to me is I look back and say, man, I grew up in sports. I had coaches that invested in me, but I want to be there for them and really invest into these kids because if if no one else is, then I want to be that person for them. I'm not trying to replace anything, but
sure.
we need to invest in these kids.
Yeah. And, I think when an adult believes in a young person, it can change everything for them. I mean,
Mhm.
I think most of us can look to not just our parents, but somebody that really believed in us when we were younger. And it's like, wow, you believe in me. You think I can actually do something significant. And that's our opportunity to pour into those kids. And you never know when one of those little football players is going to pick up the phone and say, "Hey, Coach Ryan, I really need
Mhm.
help." And you have the opportunity to speak into their life. Like maybe their parents just, it's not that time and it takes somebody outside of the family to do that. So I think it's really cool. I love seeing how passionate you are about coaching those kids.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. I mean, like you said, there may be something they didn't want to talk to their parents about,
Right.
and you can be that person for them and help them through whatever is going through in their life. So, um, it's been a blessing. It's truly a humbling experience, but it's been so fun to see these kids and over the years. And at least this last sixth grade class that I had, I've been coaching these kids. I've got one of my boys is in fifth grade, and so I've literally have seen these kids grow up, and
Yeah.
so to see them on to the next level is a bittersweet moment because it's the first class that I really invested in,
Yeah.
and it's sad to see it kind of come to an end that way.
you know, Sometimes you look at coaches and you just think all they want to do is win. They want to relive their younger days. But hearing you talk about how passionate you are about just pouring into these kids, you're actually being the hands and feet of Jesus for these kids. And even if you're not constantly praying over them or um, testifying to them or witnessing to them, but you're living a life that reflects Jesus. I don't think you
Mhm,
always have to be hit over the head with, "Hey, come to Jesus, come to church with me," whatever, but it's this person is living a life that reflects Jesus and I really like that person and I want to know more about him and I want to know why he is that way. So it'll be
mhm,
interesting to see as the days and years go on how these kids will come back and say, okay, Coach Ryan is a stand up guy, and I want to know how I can be more like him. And then they
mhm,
get the opportunity to come back and say, okay, I want to know how to be successful like you. And you have the opportunity of saying, well, it starts with Jesus Christ alone. Like that's
mhm,
the solid foundation, and that's where you get to start. So I'll just be praying for you. It's
mhm.
funny that we're having this conversation, but like literally, I just want to pray for you as these kids come back to you and you have the opportunity to bring them to Jesus as well.
Absolutely, I appreciate that, and again, um, pray for these boys as not only as they go about, um, their journey into middle school and obviously the kids that are continuing to come to the youth program, but you just obviously continued wisdom and to help guide these kids along that path. So thank you for that.
Cool. I know that Isaiah 41:10 is
Mhm.
a very significant verse in your life. Tell me about that.
Yeah, that was again. That was when uh, a a lot was going to change in my life. Let's just say I was my first child was on the way, and I had just switched careers and had left the fitness industry, started a career into the banking world, and a lot of stress, a lot of things that were kind of happening. I just recently bought a new home a few years prior, so doing upgrades to that, and just kind of life, as we call it, life is just kind of taken over. And as most of us are, a creature of habit. Every single day I went to work, I parked in the same spot. It wasn't like a big parking lot or a big parking garage. It was a handful of parking spots in this particular banking center. And the night before that I was there, I didn't notice anything out of the abnormal. And So as I'm driving to work and just kind of thinking about all of these things, I said like a small prayer of just, I've got a new baby on the way, due within the next 2 to 3 months. Um, First time dad, new career, and actually had taken a step back financially because I wanted to kind of climb that corporate ladder, and I kind of saw the direction of what I was currently doing, but the opportunity that presented itself in a different venture. So I took a chance, but at the same time, I was doing my faith, and I just like God, what's in store? What's going on? And so again, as I'm driving to work, I said a small little prayer, like, God, just help me, speak to me, let me know that you've got something figured out here. And as I'm pulling into the parking lot, I noticed this kind of shiny object sitting in what my parking spot that I always parked in. I say mine, but it's the same one I was in the night before. And as I pull up closer and closer, this object, the light kind of, dwindles down a little bit more and more. And so I pull up, and I'm telling you, when I say this light, it was looked like the size of you know, the Empire State Building was in this parking spot. That's how bright this thing was and how big it looked to me at the time. So I pull in and open up my door, and there sat a small little pen, the size of, regular something you write with. And on the side of that pen was verse Isaiah 41:10. And I'm paraphrasing it, but it literally said, "Do not fear, for I am with you, and I am your God." But obviously, the verse itself, "Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous hand." And it was at that moment that I was like, "Man, like I literally just prayed. I was literally just here the night before. This pen was not there, and to think of all the things that had to transpire in the entire universe for that pen to sit there the next morning was not by coincidence. It was a God moment. And you know my child was born a few months later, or about a few weeks later. I was part of healthcare sharing. My medical bills were taken care of. um, I ended up getting a promotion a few months later, and it was just like, wow, like God is real. God is speaking to me. God is showing me that He has a plan, and I just need to sit back and hopefully enjoy the ride, because it can be rocky at times because we always forget that there's a devil. But that was a moment for me that was just like, man, like little old me, here I am, just a random person, and God literally just spoke to me, and it was a verse that I can never forget, and a moment that just is part of a testimony that I share with people to say, listen, at the most unique time, whether it's at the highest of highs or the lowest of lows, God will speak to you. You just have to wait and listen. And it's funny. Um, After I got my Bible open up right here, I even look at Matthew 7:7. Ask and it will be given to you. And so you ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. So again, all this kind of ties into that moment.
So good. So good. I want to talk about what you're currently doing,
Mm-hmm.
um, because that's kind of what brought us together was the fact that you work at NetWell. Tell us what NetWell is and what it's all about.
Yeah. NetWell is a healthcare sharing ministry, and we are a community of like-minded faith individuals that come together and help share amongst our medical expenses and our medical needs. If you want to simplify it from a biblical standpoint, it's really built off Galatians 6:2, which is bear one of those burdens, fulfill the law of Christ. And so when you think about what the early church was doing, was caring for one another, helping one another. It's the same concept, and that's like-minded individuals coming together to share amongst those who have a need, and help them along that path and that journey. And to really even take it a step further, there's prayer involved. There's other things that we do outside of just medical expenses, because we look at it from a standpoint of a multifaceted approach. So you get the mind, you got the body, you got the spirit, and we really try to help those kind of three prongs of what we really need on a day to day aspect to keep us going, to keep us active, and to keep us going in that journey.
Yeah, I know when I started taking a look at NetWell, I noticed some of the testimonies are like, I'm paying half of what I used to pay in my health insurance. And I'm like, wow, really? How is that even possible? But that's just the beauty of a body of believers coming together for medical expenses. So if anybody's looking for a new provider, a healthcare provider, go to NetWell WOF, like Women of Faith, netwellwof.com, and check out what they do. Ryan and their entire team are wonderful to work with. You are an official sponsor of Women of Faith. I'm so thankful that we've gotten to know each other, and
Mhm.
you and your team's heart and desire to truly help people. This isn't just a health insurance company where you just pay your premium and then go on your merry way. It's an opportunity for a body of believers to come together and support
Mhm.
one another. And you really have God at the center of it all. And I think that that's just really beautiful of how you run your business, your ministry.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I mean, pretty much summarize it there. It's like-minded people. It's a community, and if you really want to take it a step further, it's a family. It's a family of people that not only um, help each other in the most difficult time, but it's a family of people that just come alongside and support you in ways that you could never see it anywhere else, because there's prayer, there are real life people you can talk to,
That's a huge
beyond.
plus. Let's talk about that for a second. You can, when you go to netwellwof.com, there's a phone number there, and you can actually pick up the phone, dial it, and somebody will talk to you live on the other side of it. I think that's such a huge benefit because I think so often we're like, we can't figure it out. We don't know how to make this work. I don't know the answers. And the beautiful thing is, NetWell will actually walk you through it step by step with a live person on the phone. Sorry to
Correct.
cut you off. I just want to make sure everybody knew that because I think that's such a great benefit.
No, I think, and that's one of the things, if you think about it, that we've lost touch with it. Not just us. I'm just talking about in general.
Sure.
You have a hard time getting a hold of somebody, and that's what we're here to do, is to help you and provide you with the right information you need, or the the technology that you need to be successful and along this journey and this path. And yeah, you pick up the phone, they're going to get a hold of somebody,
Yes.
and we're going to make sure we're available.
And the testimonies are like, I'm paying half of what I was paying for my health insurance premiums. Like, I just think that is mind blowing. And it may not be exactly that, but it seems like a lot of testimonies over and over again is a huge cost savings. So, Ryan, I want to close with this. Thank you for being here. I want to close with this. This is your very last question. So you can share whatever you want on this very last question. I want to know Ryan McGraw's truth bomb. What is something that God has been laying on your heart lately that you just want other people to know about?
I think that it's being intentional and always listening and having your eyes open to help somebody. And I say that because you know what we've seen over the past couple years, especially if not to get into a debate with COVID, but we have set ourselves up in a society to where so many people are just closed off, and that's because of the restrictions that were put in place. And that's it is what it is. But that's one of the things that I think that people found themselves, is that just they isolated themselves. And I think that we, as ourselves, whether you're Christian or not, that we just kind of get stuck in that norm of it's just our own little space, our own little world. And I think that you being intentional and reaching out to somebody, if God lays somebody on your heart to reach out to them, there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
And even if it's a simple text, hey, I'm thinking about you. Hey, I just want you to know I'm praying for you. Hey, I just want you to know I'm here for you. And it really hit that. It's funny you asked me that, because it really hit home yesterday, because we, there's some additional prayer that we could seek in our community. We just had a young boy in high school who unfortunately is no longer with us. Passed away yesterday. High school student, and it's really a moment of when you have, not just have kids, but you think about, something as simple as of a text or a call to him, could it change his entire outlook? And I just think we get too isolated and too concerned and with technology, or that we just kind of forget that there are other people that are seeking and asking for help. And I just ask that people just really think about trying to be intentional of how we can help one another, how we can encourage one another, um, and care for one another. And that's, not to even go back into football, but that's one thing I teach is a brotherhood. Like, these are your brothers.
Yeah.
Help each other. Don't make fun of each other. Don't hurt each other. Don't, you stick up for one another. It's just be intentional and love on one another and help each other. And don't isolate yourself.
Yeah. So
And if
good.
you need help, ask for it.
So good. I love your heart for others. I love your heart for the Lord. I love your heart for even at NetWell. I know I just see how passionate you are about truly helping other people with their medical expenses. I mean, that's been something that you've had a benefit of and have seen such a life giving change for yourself in just knowing that your expenses are covered. So, thank you so much for being here. I always say I'm wildly cheering you because I know that you're just making such an impact on the kingdom. So, thanks for being here today, Ryan.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. And it's been a tremendous opportunity to know you, your husband, GJ. So thank you so much for your support. And again, thank you for having me on and allowing NetWell to be part of this journey.